views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Come up here on Perspectives. We continue to celebrate Black History Month. Straight ahead on our show, we talk to Black author, father, and educator Vernon Gibbs II. He actually joins us talking about his latest children's book, as well as providing some advice on how to teach and talk to your young children about race, racism, and Black history. So stay tuned because all this and much more is headed your way. Perspectives starts now.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Of course, we thank you for joining us. Every week, we can be watched here on BronxNet's Channel 67, where we bring you new information as it pertains to Black History Month. It's also the latest current events and things that are affecting our African-American community, and that plus a whole lot more. We invite you to stay connected to us on our social media platforms, BronxNet TV. Also, if you're looking to catch me personally, Daren C. Jaime on Facebook, also DC Jaime 23 on Twitter and Instagram. There you can find some information as well as some inspiration. And coming up on today's show, we go front and center with a very, very special guest. COVID-19 has definitely changed the way, completely changed the way that our life has changed in 2020, especially when it comes to parents as they deal with young children. We know stay-at-home orders have helped to promote virtual learning. Also, shutdowns have also forced remote learning. It's coupled with high racial tension in a divided country during these times. It's even added some more stress to our families. Today, we feature one parent who is finding a creative way to educate and thrive as a Black parent, and then also share some great advice for us. He is the author of a new children's book, When Good Fruits Go Bad. He's also telling a story about finding new and exciting ways to eat healthy, but more importantly, more about self-worth and value. Please be joined by Vernon Gibbs II. We welcome him now to Perspectives. And Vernon, good to have you.
Good. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on today.
Hey, great to have you sharing with us and a little bit about your book, When Good Fruits Go Bad. And for people who want to know more about your book, obviously this is a book that you actually birthed during COVID, a stay-at-home time, and you are a stay-at-home dad. So talk to us a little bit about how you were navigating COVID and what was going on with you professionally while COVID was going on.
Well, you know, it's funny because when COVID hit in March of last year, I felt like I was definitely more prepared than most for the situation. Having been a stay-at-home dad for about 5 years, it'll be 6 years this year. When my wife had twins, we decided that one of us should stay home. And my wife is actually a physician, a child psychiatrist. And at that point, I was working at Columbia and decided, you know what? It makes sense for me to be home with the kids. And I was more than willing to do it. I love being home with them. So that happened about 5 years ago. So when the pandemic kind of hit in March, I had already been working on the book. It had been based on an incident that I had with my son a few years ago where he wanted to throw out a banana. And I was like, no, that banana is just a little bruise. Let's use it in a smoothie or some way like that, as opposed to just throwing it in the garbage. It just seemed very wasteful. I never thought I'd be that dad. You know, growing up, my father was the same way, and I used to make fun of him. And now to be able to do that and say this to my own son was just really funny. So that's how a story kind of birthed about eating healthy, creating less waste, and just, self-worth and knowing that you have value in spite of the bumps, bruises, and scars that we all have. Just because you're a little bit maybe bruised from a relationship or something that happened in your past, it doesn't mean that you should be thrown in the trash or that you should be discarded. So that's kind of how this story started. And 3-4 years later, I did, as you said, I did launch it during this pandemic, which was a whole another. There was a nice way to be able to put out some kind of product that I thought parents would enjoy and that kids would enjoy. And I think that when the pandemic hit, I was more prepared than most to be home with my kids because I had been home with them for 5 years. So being home with them for a few more weeks, I thought it was going to be a few more weeks. I think we all did.
We all did.
Being
we all did.
with them was great.
Yeah,
we all did. Yeah. So
we all did.
They'd be back in school by April or May, and so it was fortunate that I had already had the experience to be able to be home with them and really, just have more time with them. So the book was just a great way to have a product out there that I thought parents would enjoy and kids would enjoy alike.
Yeah. Would you ever think that a lesson that you actually spent with your son would actually be a lesson that actually goes out and starts as motivation towards the masses?
I never did, because originally, when my cousin and I were putting the book together, we had a lot of ideas for book ideas, and this one just kept coming to the top, like, oh, that's a really cute idea for a book. So we never thought that it would turn into a book that was about, especially about the self-worth aspect of it. That wasn't something that was kind of built into the book. It just kind of came out of it as we were looking at it and reading it, because we know that there's that can be an issue in the Black community, just this idea of, having value and feeling like you're undervalued. And we felt like that was a bigger message. I mean, the eating healthy is a very important part, because that's another issue that you often see in the Black community, access to healthy food options, and just this idea of learning how to cook in healthy ways and incorporate fruits and vegetables into your diet. That can be a very big issue. It wasn't when I was growing up. My parents were always very good about making sure that was part of our diet. So just the idea that this has these deeper meanings beyond just the eating healthy and the creating less waste was a surprise. And we've both been surprised and shocked at how receptive people have been, whether it's been teachers. I've had a lot of dietitians who have seen the book and love it and love the message, because it talks about self-worth and value, but it also teaches, eating healthy. And just the idea of creating less waste, which we do a lot of in this country. So I think it's important to have those issues brought up more and more as we can.
Yeah. Where did you get the whole idea about eating healthy? Because we do understand in the African American community, communities of color, we suffer with the high rates of obesity. We suffer with, just not being healthy. So for you, where did the healthy eating, healthy living component come from?
You know what? I think it was just, as a parent trying to find healthy options for my kids. It just was something that I think, having grown up eating, very balanced meals, now that I had 3 kids of my own, it can be easy to say, oh, just have some French fries or have potato chips. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to be home. These kids, I want them to make sure that they have the idea of eating healthy ingrained in them early. So this idea of, eat your vegetables before you eat dessert, and those kinds of things were just something that my wife and I were always invested in. My wife probably more than me. And like you had mentioned, the obesity and, early onset diabetes that we see in the Black community. We want to make sure that our kids learned about how to eat healthy and just make healthy choices. You're not going to do all the time. I like dessert just as much as they do, probably more, but I want to make sure that they kind of have a layout and kind of a game plan for making sure that they eat those healthy options. And my wife, coming from being a child psychiatrist, sees children who come from homes where they don't have those options or they aren't taught that. So it's something that we've always promoted with our kids.
Yeah. Let's take a healthy break. Be back with more. I'm going to talk with Vernon in a few seconds. Continuing more, talking about his work, but then also talking about him being a stay-at-home dad. That when we return right here on Perspectives.
Radio reports and newspaper headlines in the 1970s and 80s misrepresented communities in the borough of the Bronx. Then, something transformative happened. By, for, and about the Bronx, BronxNet was born.
BronxNet provides media education,
opening the doors to competitive careers in the media industry
for thousands of students in middle school,
high school,
and college.
BronxNet. New Yorkers have mastered existing in crowded places and walking fast. Now is the time to master social distancing. Social distancing means creating more personal space between yourself and others, at least 6 feet. Creating more physical distance protects yourself and other New Yorkers from the spread of coronavirus. To do your part, stay home. Stay connected through calls, texts, and video chats. If you have to go out for essentials like food and medicine, avoid crowds and put space between yourself and other people standing in line. If you go outside, just remember to keep 6 feet of space between yourself and others. This is not just about you. It's also about protecting the most vulnerable and preserving the health of essential workers who are on the front lines. If you're feeling overwhelmed, connect with counselors at NYC Well. Text COVID to 692-692 for real-time updates or visit nyc.gov/coronavirus.
And we are back here on Perspectives, continuing our conversation with Vernon Gibbs II. He is an author of a new book called When Good Fruit Goes Bad. And yes, a stay-at-home dad. And before the break, we talked a little bit about, we're going to ask him about being a stay-at-home dad. Now, we hear a lot, Vernon, about stay-at-home mothers, but for you, an opportunity to be a stay-at-home dad. And, full disclosure, early on when my son was probably in his initial year, I became a stay-at-home dad for about a year and a half. Then I had to get out there and hit that job,
Exactly.
But talk to us about being a stay-at-home dad and what that really meant for you.
For me, it was a great opportunity to be in my kid's life a lot more than, fathers tend to be. It's usually in a lot of families, the father is the main breadwinner. We're blessed enough that my wife is, she's a physician, so she makes a really good salary. And it's very rare that a dad can be home and, choose to be home with his kids. So it was, when we decided to do this 5 years ago, it was, first of all, it was a financial decision because we said, putting 2 kids and, paying for a nanny, what's really the point of that if I can be home and I'm willing to be home with the kids. But I think it's an opportunity that a lot of parents sometimes might miss out on because they're missing some of those moments that they might have to when they have to go to work. And I was able to, maybe sometimes capture that with the pictures or let my wife know what was going on. So to take on a role that, predominantly most stay-at-home parents are women, it was great. I was able to find a community of other stay-at-home fathers through the Stay-at-Home Dad National Organization, other fathers who have, decided to stay home with their kids, because we love our kids and we want to, see the best for them. And I think the opportunity as a Black father to be in my kid's life as much as possible and be a role model was really important to me because my father was there for me and both my parents were there for me. They still are to this day. And it's an important role that we don't always see happen, especially, Black men deciding to be home with the kids, do the cooking and do a lot of the laundry and those roles that typically aren't, you want to say they're not for men, but they typically aren't taken on by men. So I was more than happy to take on that role. And my wife was, because a couple of days home with the kids and she's ready to go back to work.
I see. But talk to me about that, because when you have a stay-at-home dad, you have the opportunity to stay at home, talk to your children, be a little bit closer, a little bit more of an intimate relationship. I do believe the reason that my son and I are as close as we are today is because of that initial bond, right? But talk to us about what that meant for you in terms of passing on values, right? Giving them what they needed. And in terms of how that also just transcended into this career that led to authorship. Yeah,
I think when I first started being home, I wasn't sure what I was getting into. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It's my kids. How bad could it be? And then, come to find out, it was very hard. Being home with 3 kids is hard. And it takes a lot of mental gymnastics to get through it. But I thought that the opportunity to be home was more important than kind of my issue with just being home and not having time to do things. But funnily enough, being home with the kids is what inspired me to start writing, because I felt like I had a voice. I had an opportunity to talk about my experiences with my kids and just the things I was going through on a daily basis through my website. I've been writing for a website called coolminivandad.com, and yes, I am a minivan dad. I have my Toyota Sienna and I'm proud of it.
All right.
Because it fits all of us in there. We go on trips with it. So I started writing on my website to just talk about my exploits as a father and what I was going through. And just every experience I was doing with my kids was giving me an opportunity to reach out to other fathers, especially Black fathers, to talk to them about what I was going through and some of the stresses I was feeling, and just how to find that balance and not feel like being home and not being a breadwinner was made me less of a man, which is what I think people see. They think, oh, you're not making the money, so what are you there for? But I'm there to teach my kid good manners. I'm teaching them the foods to eat. I'm teaching them how to act in school. I'm teaching them to do their homework. All these things that you don't always see, and you don't always have the opportunity to be done by a father. And that kind of led me to being a writer on my own website. I wrote for the Washington Post, which was great. I did an article about miscarriages from a father's perspective. And I did another post about trying to be a happy father during a time when there was a lot of racial unrest in the world with everything that was going on with George Floyd and all these things that were just happening across the country. I was struggling. I'm here with the kids' book about being funny and being happy, but I also am a Black man who is seeing all these issues and all these things that are going on in America with the racial unrest. So I found that it was, trying to find that balance to be a good role model to my kids, but also talk to them about the real things that were going on in the country. It was tough, but we were able to get through it. And I think it's going to be a kind of a constant battle, because I think things are going to be happening all the time. You have to be ready to talk to your kids about it.
Talk to me about some of these hard discussions. Everybody talks about that discussion that you have to have as a father with your children.
Yeah.
When it comes to police, I mean, obviously you've been home for a few years. In the last year and a half, a lot of racial unrest, a lot of civil unrest. What's that conversation been like? How easy has it been for you to talk to your children about what we're watching out here?
My kids are younger, so I have, the twins who are 5, and then I have a 7-year-old. But, my 7-year-old, he's a big kid, so he looks like he's probably 8 or 9. So I just, have to balance how I talk to them about these issues, not watching CNN with them sometimes because it can be just too much, or not watching certain networks because they can see a lot of images on TV that can be scary. And they're wondering, oh, is that going to happen to me? What happened to that man? And that kind of thing. So I think it's just bringing it up in conversations to just talk about their relationship with kids in school. How do you see your friends? I think my kids just look at their friends as friends. They're not like, oh, that's my Black friend, that's my white friend, that's my this. They see them as kids and other kids. So I think understanding that there is that innocence with kids, but also understanding that not everyone is going to view them the same way, and saying, some people are going to look at you as a Black kid and assume certain things about you. And you have to, kind of work harder to overcome those assumptions. And it's a battle that you're going to have to face now, especially when they get older. And, I fear, my kids, when they get old enough to drive, the idea that they have to be very, you don't want to have to be overly sympathetic or overly nice to someone, but you have to, have manners. And even that, in those situations, sometimes that's not enough. But, you have to, bring your kids up to know those realities and know that not everyone's going to view you the way you're viewing them right now. And we try to teach them to view everyone as equal and to understand that and respect authority. But at the same time, you can talk about injustices that are happening if you're being mistreated for some reason because of the color of your skin or just for other reasons. So to feel not like you have to bow down to authority, but respect it, but also understand when authority is kind of overstepping their bounds.
Guys, take a quick break. We're going to come back with you and talk a little bit more. We're going to find out about what you got coming up in the future. You've launched one. How many more are on the horizon? Stay with us. We got more here on Perspectives. We'll be back with Vernon right after this. Back here on Perspectives, Daren Jaime here with you, and we encourage you to stay connected to us here on Perspectives. You can hit us on all of our social media sites. Also, again, you can engage with us here via our social media platforms. Mine, Daren C. Jaime. There you can reach me professionally on Facebook, and then also on Twitter and Instagram, DC Jaime 23. There you can be able to get connected to us and find out more about what is going on with information as well as inspiration. Vernon Gibbs II is our guest, talking about his book, When Good Fruit Goes Bad. And yes, Vernon, I want to bring you in and talk a little bit more about the book itself. Yes. Obviously, it's been a good success for you first time around. Mm-hmm. Talk about what you're looking to do in the future. I mean, you took a bad experience, transcended into a book. I'm sure you've had a whole lot more life lessons going on in the house. Talk to us about what else could be on the horizon here.
Yeah, well, the book has been a really great success. People have been sharing images of the book, especially with their kids. That just kind of came naturally. People would order the book, and all of a sudden they post a picture of their kid with the book. They'd show them doing experiments to maybe make jellies or jams out of strawberries that were a little bit overripe, or making smoothies, and it was pretty amazing to see that. So really, the next part of this journey, I think, is working with educators and teachers. We have a great online packet that we created, an educational learning packet, which is about 21 pages of free content that has fruit facts, crossword puzzles, did you know? So it's a great way for parents, if they're reading the book, to have a lot of supplemental information that would help them to learn more about fruit and eating healthy. So the big part of what we're trying to do now through my management, through Bullion Entertainment, is just to get the word out about the books, but especially get the book in as many kids' hands as possible, and educators, because I think the lessons here around eating healthy, creating less waste, and just self-worth and knowing that you have value are really important. And it's going to be something that I think, with everything that's happening with the pandemic and kids having been home a lot, people's eating habits change. So maybe they're not eating as healthy as they should be. Maybe they're putting on weight because they've just been home and they're not going anywhere. And I think part of this, as kids are going back to school and things are changing, it's warming up. In some parts of the country, it's warming up. Other parts, it's still, pretty bad. But as we're moving forward, making this book part of a larger conversation around kind of these different issues that are out there. That's really the focus for the next few months. Talking to dietitians, talking to teachers, and just talking about the book, about the content, about the free content, and just how we can talk more about eating healthy and make it more of a part of our life and a part of kids' life and adults' life, so it becomes just ingrained in just everything you do. You brush your teeth, you eat a piece of fruit, like just things that you kind of normally do on a day-to-day basis. And then we're also working on a Christmas book in a few months, which is really going to talk about some of the beautiful things that you see at Christmas. So my cousin Steve is working hard on that one, so we're looking forward to that. And then just continuing to promote the book, getting as many kids to know about it, as many people to know about it, is really the goal, because we think it has a really great message, and the goal is to get it to as many people as possible.
Well, while we're talking about how do people get their hands on the book, what do they do?
Well, they can go to the website. They can go to my website, coolminivandad.com/fruitbook. I see that made you smile. So
sure. That minivan will do it for you.
Exactly, will do it, yeah. So coolminivandad.com/fruitbook, and that's where you'll find all the places it's sold. It's on Amazon. It's actually being sold in a small bookstore called Boogie Down Brooks. It's a Bronx-based bookstore where I did a story time for them a while ago, and they're great. They do story times, so support them. And that's where you'll also find information. There have been a lot of reviews of the book by dads. I've gotten a lot of support from the dad community and dietitians. Some people have done recipes based on the book, so there's been a lot of great content around it. So if you go to the website, you'll find links to all that information. I'm also on Instagram, where I post a lot about my family, on Cool Minivan Dad, and then I'm on Twitter at Cool Minivan Dad 1.
Yeah, got a little under 2 minutes left, but I want to get this question in here about you also are the illustrator as well.
Yes.
Talk to me about that image of seeing someone of color on a cover, seeing someone of color in a book. What does that do for the self-esteem of young African-American children, being able to see somebody like them?
Yeah, that was a big point when we were kind of putting the characters together for the book. I always imagined the Sarah Sweets character as African-American. I just thought it would be a great image that you don't necessarily see connected with health and nutrition. I said, this would be great. It was partly inspired by Michelle Obama's her campaign, Let's Move, where she was talking about eating healthy. And I was like, you know what, let me kind of base it on her and have her be this superhero who really talks to the grocery owner about how to eat healthy. And I think having those kinds of images in books is really important today because we don't always see it. And the more we can see it, the more commonplace it'll become. And then it won't be such a strange thing to see, oh, the protagonist and the superhero in the book is Black. It's just be kind of a normal thing. You see it, it's like, oh, that's great. She's a strong character who knows what she's talking about. She kind of helps the fruit learn their lesson and just teach a great lesson about eating healthy.
And so we want to make sure that people get connected. Of course, we tell you that you can find out more information about Vernon's book by visiting his website. Go ahead, say it one more time.
Yes, it's coolminivandad.com/fruitbook.
Got to ask the question, how many people do you know in a cool minivan? Well, we know Vernon, and he's in a cool minivan. And certainly want to thank you for being with us here on Perspectives as you continue in your book and your journey and being a stay-at-home dad, dad that's really doing it on the move. Thank you so much for what you're doing in educating not just your children, but children all across America and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Vernon Gibbs II, our guest here on Perspectives. Want to thank him for joining us and being a part of our show. As always, we encourage you to get connected to the book. Literacy is important. Also, healthy eating is important. So if you desire literacy and healthy eating, there's no greater combination than to be able to get one of Vernon's books, be able to read it, and then also promoting healthy eating as well. Hopefully you'll be able to get some healthy tips and encourage your own family. Look, I'm Daren Jaime saying thank you for watching here on Perspectives. Till next time we meet, stay safe, share your perspective. You don't know, it just might make a difference in someone else's life. Take care.